Hi, everyone. This is Right to Life of Central California Director John Girardi. The following presentation we're going to give you was part of an educational event we hosted at Right to Life of Central California last week called Abortion Law in the Biden Era. The speaker for this presentation is Professor Michael New from the Catholic University of America, and he's going to talk to us about what we can expect in the upcoming 4 years from the Biden administration as far as abortion policy. And our video should begin right now. So tonight's event, we're going to get started. Tonight's event is going to kick off with Professor Michael New. Professor New is a visiting assistant professor of political science and social research at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Professor New received his PhD and his master's degree in political science and statistics, respectively, both of those degrees from Stanford University. So let's try not to hold that against him. I'm a Notre Dame grad, so we play Stanford in football every year. So it's just my little personal bias there. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, nevertheless, in spite of his Stanford, Professor New has done a lot of excellent research on behalf of the pro-life cause. He is a scholar with, among others, with the Charlotte Lozier Institute, which is one of the leading pro-life think tanks in the country. And he has been widely published in National Review and a whole bunch of other outlets. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Michael New.
All right, great. So thanks for the kind introduction. And, I spent 5 very happy years of my life as a grad student at Stanford. So I did some pro-life work when I was there. My studies kept me pretty busy. This is before the West Coast Walk for Life. But one thing I was very proud of during my time at Stanford is we did actually collaborate with the students at UC Berkeley and did a pro-life conference my last year there. So we actually had a statewide collegiate pro-life conference in 2002. So it was nice to see Stanford and Cal folks actually working together for a bit. And they did the conference again in 2003. Actually, I came back for it, even though I'd left. So good to be back. I've enjoyed my time in California and pleased that John's invited me to give a presentation today. So I have a PowerPoint, and we're going to share the screen, and let's just hope everything goes according to plan here. Looks like you've disabled screen sharing, John.
We are enabling it right now, Professor.
Okay, great. Let's try again. I can share the screen. So here we are. Here's the screen share. And we'll go to the slideshow and start the show from the beginning. So here we're going to talk about the impact of the Biden administration. I've kind of lost my cursor here, but that's okay. On sanctity of life issues. So before I do, I want to kind of give a couple quick commercials about things I'm involved with. I met John a couple of years ago at something called the Fda Institute at Notre Dame. And I just want to encourage the attendees to think about applying to the Fda Institute. The Fda Institute is a week's worth of pro-life instruction. It's held every June on the Notre Dame campus. There are lectures and presentations on theology, philosophy, law, biology. I do either one presentation or 2 presentations on the social science. It's free of charge. If you get in, all you have to do is get yourself to South Bend. They put you up, they feed you, and you get to meet a great group of pro-lifers. You get to meet DC professionals. You get to meet people who've just graduated college. You get to meet nuns, seminarians, people working for various Respect Life ministries, people working for pregnancy help centers. So a great group of pro-life activists. So again, I can't recommend it enough. Applications are coming up soon. The due date's March 1st. There may be some wiggle room there, but I'd encourage everyone to apply. I think it's well worth your while. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on the faculty. I think John can testify what a good program it is. I also want to talk about the think tank that I'm affiliated with, the Charlotte Lozier Institute. For a long time, we really didn't have a dedicated pro-life research institute, that we had to rely on the Guttmacher Institute for data and analysis. And Guttmacher, up until about 2006 or 7, was the research arm of Planned Parenthood. So we're really not new anymore. In fact, we were launched around 2011, I think became public in 2012. So we're almost 10 years old, but still people should know about us, that we have a great team of scholars and researchers. We have experts in law, public health, social science. And again, we have research and commentary on pro-life issues almost every day. Give us a look on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. I think it'd be well worth your while. So I want to give a quick outline for the presentation. We're talking about sanctity of life issues in the Biden era, and there's several things that Joe Biden can do, and sadly probably will do, to undermine the sanctity of human life. He can do this through his executive branch appointees, He can do this through executive actions. He can do it through his legislative priorities. Outside the Biden administration, I want to give some other things we need to think about and be concerned about. But I also want to wrap up some good news, because I know that a lot of the presentation is going to be negative, but I always want to give people some reasons for hope and some reasons for optimism. So I will do that at the very end. So basically, I would say Joe Biden as president gets to appoint many people to the executive branch. That includes the cabinet. And the cabinet appointee that has the most power over sanctity of life issues is the Secretary of the Department for Health and Human Services. All right. HHS Secretary has a lot of power. One thing he does is HHS controls a lot of grant money for teen pregnancy prevention programs. And unfortunately, the Biden administration likely will steer that money to programs that encourage and emphasize contraception. They'll probably steer it away from programs that emphasize abstinence. Because of the Affordable Care Act, the HHS has a lot of power over health insurance. So I'll talk about that in a second. So this has, so this appointee has a great deal of power over public policy involving abortion and other issues pertaining to the sanctity of human life. Now, unfortunately, as you probably know, Joe Biden has nominated Javier Becerra to be HHS Secretary. Who is Javier Becerra? A couple things. He was a former congressman from California. Also, he used to be the Attorney General of California. And I'll just say this. If you thought Kathleen Sebelius was bad during the Obama administration, I hate to say it, Becerra's probably going to be worse. I would say if you look at his track record, he's probably going to be much worse. Let me explain. Very pro-abortion voting record. As a congressman, had a 100% voting record from NARAL, a 100% voting record from Planned Parenthood Action Fund, a 100% voting record from Planned Parenthood of California. As a matter of public policy, Javier Becerra supports tax-free funding of abortion. He opposed the partial birth abortion ban. He also opposes legislation that would protect infants born alive during botched abortions. So, very aggressive pro-abortion record. But that's not the worst of it. I think, no matter who Biden picked, it would probably be somebody who supported legal abortion. But here's what concerns me more than anything. As California Attorney General, Becerra really used his power to bully and intimidate and harass Christians and pro-lifers. He defended a California law that required that all insurance plans cover abortion on demand. I think even worse, he defended a law that required pro-life pregnancy help centers to violate their conscience rights and require them to provide clients with information about how to obtain an abortion. In California, you have great pregnancy help groups that help women in need. Becerra defended laws as Attorney General that required these groups to give information out about how to obtain an abortion. That's a real violation of their conscience rights. These people want to affirm human life. They don't want to encourage or even tell people about places that might terminate human life. Even worse, Becerra even sued the Little Sisters of the Poor. He insisted that they should be allowed to, he insisted that they be required to buy health insurance plans that pay for contraception and abortifacients. Again, another violation of their conscience rights. I mean, Little Sisters of the Poor doesn't want to be political. They want to serve the elderly. They want to serve, especially the elderly who are low income. They don't want to spend time in litigation. But because of Javier Becerra, he wanted to make them pay for health insurance plans that covered contraception and abortifacients. And as a result, they had to devote scarce resources and scarce time to litigation. And it gets even worse. In 2016, I'm sure you heard, investigative journalists David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt provide video evidence, very compelling video evidence, that Planned Parenthood was engaged in the sale and trafficking of fetal body parts. And I would encourage everyone to look up these videos online. Even years later, it's still shocking. Now, Becerra was the Attorney General. Did he go after Planned Parenthood for their egregious and outrageous conduct? No. Instead, he pursued legal action against the journalists, Daleiden and Merritt. He charged them with 14 counts of illegal reporting and 1 count of conspiracy, and a move that even the LA Times, hardly a right-wing newspaper, called a disturbing outreach, their exact words. So, Becerra really is in the pocket of Planned Parenthood. Now, it's tragic. I mean, we are in a global pandemic. So does Joe Biden nominate a health policy expert to serve as Secretary of HHS? No, basically, he's a political favorite of Planned Parenthood. He nominates an abortion rights activist. So there have been some committee hearings on Becerra. There was a committee hearing, this week. A couple different, congressional committees held hearings on the nomination. I think the vote will be next week. We have been rallying. Democrats for Life had a rally in Washington, D.C. on Saturday. I was very pleased to speak at that. We're hoping that Joe Manchin does the right thing and votes against him. We're also trying to work on some of the other Republicans, like Lisa Murkowski, seem to drop some tea leaves that she might support this nomination. Again, we need to find a way to stop him. If we don't, I mean, the hearings and the publicity has been good. I mean, sunlight's the best disinfectant. But again, we need to work to his defeat, that we don't want someone like him chairing the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, Joe Biden also has a lot of control over what happens in the executive branch. There's a couple things he might do that might, again, undermine a culture, that might, undermine, culture of life. He might very likely will repeal the Respect Life rule. And he has already repealed the Mexico City policy. I'll talk about both of these in turn. So the Trump administration enacted the Protect Life rule in 2018. It limited the ability of entities that performed abortion to receive certain government grants. This money was redirected to health centers that don't perform abortions. And because of this, Planned Parenthood lost approximately $60 million a year in federal funding. So we didn't succeed in defunding Planned Parenthood, but we did, make a dent in it. That the Trump administration did enact this Protect Life rule, and we should thank them and applaud them for that. The Biden administration likely repeal this, and that will make Planned Parenthood and other entities that perform abortions able to get more government funding. So we need to keep an eye on that.
Hey, Michael, I don't want to interrupt your flow too much, but I just wanted to make one mention that I forgot at the start of your talk. In case any of you are interested in asking questions, in Zoom, there is a chat feature. And all of you who are participants, if you have any questions for Professor New or for any of the subsequent speakers during the talk, do feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and then we can select some of those. And at the end of Professor New's talk, we can ask him some of those questions. So I apologize, Professor New, I should have mentioned that at the start of the talk, but I just wanted to let everyone know that they had that opportunity. So anyway, carry on.
All right, so another thing the Biden administration tragically has already done is reverse the Mexico City policy. And the Mexico City policy is something that every Republican presidential administration since Ronald Reagan has put in place. And what it does, it prevents U.S. federal aid dollars from going to non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that either promote or perform abortions. Again, this was put in place by President Reagan in 1984. It was also put in place by George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. Trump administration, the Trump, like other Republican presidents, put the Mexico City policy back in place. And he also strengthened it. And he, expanded it so it kind of covered all international health care aid, totaling $9 billion. So Trump not only put it in place, Mexico City policy, he expanded it. And that was a good thing. We should applaud him and his administration for doing. That said, very shortly after taking office, the Biden administration reversed the Mexico City policy. So that means that, federal aid dollars, your taxpayer dollars, will go to NGOs that promote and perform abortions. So again, this means that our federal aid dollar, federal tax dollars will be going to overseas groups, either do abortions or promote them. So that's a real setback. What about legislation? Well, a couple of legislative priorities I want to talk about. One is the Equality Act, and another is a repeal of the Hyde Amendment. So the Equality Act, a lot of the coverage of the Equality Act deals with how it affects transgender Americans, and that's important. But I want to talk a little about sanctity of life issues, which I don't think got as much attention as it should have. The language of the Equality Act pretty clearly states that any refusal to do abortion is pregnancy discrimination. So what this means in practice is that this would jeopardize the conscience rights of doctors and other healthcare professionals who either don't wish to perform abortions or assist with abortions. That tragically, the United States, abortion has been legal in all 50 states since the Roe v. Wade decision in 1973. And one thing I think we've done pretty well as a country, it's tragic abortion is legal. It's horrible that 60 million abortions have happened. But one thing I think we've done a pretty good job at, not perfect, pretty good, is we have been good about defending conscience rights. By and large, with a few exceptions, doctors and other healthcare professionals who don't perform abortions don't have to. The Equality Act jeopardizes all this. So we might really see the conscience rights of Christian doctors or religious doctors be violated if the Equality Act comes to pass. So some would also argue, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen some analysts argue that the Equality Act might not only violate the conscience rights of healthcare professionals, but it might also jeopardize the Hyde Amendment It might also jeopardize other kinds of protected pro-life laws we have, both the state and federal level. So tragically, the Hyde Amendment, I should not say the Hyde Amendment, the Equality Act I meant, did pass the U.S. House today. It passed by a 224 to 206 margin. It looked like every Democrat and 3 Republicans voted in favor. So it'll go to the Senate. I think this is something that the Senate will filibuster. I think we have a good chance to defeat the Equality Act in the U.S. Senate. But, senators need to hear from pro-lifers. We need to make it very clear that we don't want this bill passing. They should use the filibuster power against it. And again, we don't want the conscience rights of our healthcare professionals being violated. So that's an important priority. I would argue our top priority, that's important. This is very important too. Joe Biden wants to see the Hyde Amendment repealed. So I'll give you a little history of the Hyde Amendment. Again, Roe v. Wade was handed down by the Supreme Court in 1973. And in the initial going, pro-lifers realized that getting the Supreme Court to reverse this decision probably was not going to happen, in the short term. That said, pro-lifers, were strategic. They wanted to do something tangible to lower the abortion rate and protect the conscience rights of taxpayers. And one strategy they pursued successfully was the Hyde Amendment. So the Hyde Amendment is a rider to the annual appropriations bill that funds the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Labor. And what the Hyde Amendment does is it limits the ability of the federal government to use tax dollars to pay for abortions through the Medicaid program. Now, it's not a ban on funding of abortion through Medicaid, but it is a pretty tight limit that only abortions in a handful of somewhat unusual circumstances can be funded by the federal government through Medicaid. So it's a pretty tight limit and does prevent a lot of taxpayer funding from funding abortion. The Hyde Amendment has been passed every year since 1976, and it was, again, a big political victory for pro-lifers. And one thing I should have included, it was also an important kind of legal victory for pro-lifers, that after it was passed, there was a lot of litigation, that cases involving the Hyde Amendment kind of worked their way through the courts in the 1970s. In 1980, Supreme Court agreed to hear a case involving the Hyde Amendment. And in 1980, in a case called Harris v. McRae, the Supreme Court ruled and upheld the Hyde Amendment. They agreed that abortion, was legal, but they said that even though it's legal, taxpayers don't have to pay for it with their taxpayer dollars. So the Hyde Amendment was upheld by the Supreme Court in 1980, the Harris v. McRae decision. And interestingly, the U.S. abortion rates fallen just about every year since that time. So it was a big political victory for pro-lifers and a big kind of judicial victory as well. Now, the Hyde Amendment used to be bipartisan. When it passed, it used to get a lot of votes from both Democrats and Republicans. In fact, 107 House Democrats voted for the original Hyde Amendment in 1976. When they were president, neither President Clinton or President Obama really came out in favor of it, but both presidents agreed to sign appropriations bills that contained the Hyde Amendment. So you had 2 Democratic presidents signing appropriations bills that contained Hyde protections. As a U.S. Senator, Joe Biden supported the Hyde Amendment. He had the position of a lot of Democrats in the House and Senate. They thought abortion should be legal, but not paid for with federal taxpayer dollars. So Joe Biden, as U.S. Senator, he supported the Hyde Amendment. That said, as you're probably aware, the Democratic Party has shifted to the left on sanctity of life issues. And that has really jeopardized the Hyde Amendment. At least 180 House Democrats are on record opposing Hyde, probably more than that. That's just the count I came up with, which is an old count from 2 years ago. It's probably more than that. And when running for president during the summer 2019, Joe Biden changed his position on the Hyde Amendment. After literally decades of supporting the Hyde Amendment as a U.S. Senator from Delaware, around the summer of 2019, he changed his mind, and now he opposes the Hyde Amendment. So again, Joe Biden thinks that not only should abortion be legal, it should be paid for with federal taxpayer dollars. Now, the Hyde Amendment has been very powerful for pro-lifers. That I think that one thing I've done a lot of research on is the impact of different kinds of pro-life laws. And a lot of the laws we pass do some incremental good, and I think the incremental strategy is very wise. But I would say the best thing we've done legislatively is getting taxpayer dollars out of abortion. Almost everyone agrees. Pro-life researchers, quote-unquote pro-choice researchers, is once you quit funding abortion with taxpayer dollars, abortion rates go down and lives are saved. It's basic economics. If abortion is quote-unquote free or heavily subsidized, abortion rates go up. If women have to pay for abortions out of pocket, abortion rates go down. So in 2009, the Guttmacher Institute, again, this up until 2006 or 7, was Planned Parenthood's research arm. They published a literature review which looked at the impact of Medicaid funding of abortion. And again, Guttmacher really tends to downplay the impact of pro-life laws. They always argue, I think incorrectly, that more contraception is the best strategy to get abortion numbers down. But the research is just overwhelming here. I mean, a vast majority of studies they found show that if you limit tax-free funding of abortions through Medicaid, abortion rates go down and lives are saved. So even though Guttmacher tries to play down the impact of pro-life laws, even they agreed with a literature review that if you cut off tax-free funding of abortion through Medicaid, abortion rates go down and lives are saved. So the Center for Reproductive Rights did analysis of the Hyde Amendment in 2010. Again, this is obviously a group that supports legal abortion. They found it saved 1 million lives. I did a study for the Lotion Institute 2016 on the 40th anniversary of the Hyde Amendment. I updated my findings last year, 2020. I found the Hyde Amendment saved over 2.4 million lives. It continues to save over 60,000 lives a year. So please, don't let anyone tell you that pro-life political involvement has been for naught. There are literally 2 million people walking around today who owe their lives to the Hyde Amendment. So this has to be a top priority for us. We really need to go to the mat to defend the Hyde Amendment. So again, it's not going to be easy. You know, Democrats control both the House and Senate. They have majorities in both chambers. You know, that said, their majorities are slim. And, you know, there are people, you know, potentially, you know, again, it's not going to be easy, but, you know, one pivotal vote in the Senate is Joe Manchin, who represents West Virginia in the U.S. Senate. West Virginia is a very pro-life state. Most of Joe Manchin's constituents are pro-life. Joe Manchin does vote pro-life sometimes. He might be persuadable. There might be other Democrats representing red states or quote unquote purple states or red districts or purple districts that we can work on. So their margins are slim. We don't need to flip that many Democrats. So again, the Hyde Amendment, it's not a done deal. I think it can be protected. It can be preserved, but this will require our best effort. And I think we need to, again, you know, invest time, effort, energy, doing what we can to defend the Hyde Amendment. It should be our top priority. I'm not exaggerating when I say tens of thousands. By my calculation, 60,000 innocent human lives are at stake. So this really needs to be a top priority for pro-lifers this year. Now, I've talked a lot about the Biden administration, and I don't mean to keep giving you bad news, but there's more bad news. So we have some other reasons to be concerned about. Joe Biden's bad enough, but there's other things we should be concerned about. One thing we should be aware of is that there's efforts to weaken or repeal pro-life laws in blue states. And we've seen an increase in chemical abortions lately. And that's something that we need to think about and be aware of and try to counter. So again, Democratic Party shifts to the left on sanctity of life issues. You see many states repealing or weakening existing pro-life laws. So in 2017, Governor Rauner, who unfortunately is, well, it's there, who doesn't matter what party he is, but he was a Republican, but a quote unquote pro-choice Republican. He signed legislation requiring the Illinois state Medicaid program cover elective abortions. We already have data from Illinois that taxpayer funded abortions went way up in Illinois. Once this piece of legislation was signed, once it went into effect. 2019, Maine did the same thing. Maine started requiring that their state Medicaid program cover elective abortions. I don't think we have data from there yet, but I'm sure Medicaid funded abortions went up in Maine. I'm pretty sure that overall abortions went up in both these states. We see Illinois and Maine changing their policy and requiring that their state Medicaid program pay for and cover elective abortions. Not too long ago, the Roe Act in Massachusetts was passed over the governor's veto. That weakened the state parental involvement law. Massachusetts actually was one of the first states to have a pro-life parental involvement law. Their pro-life parental involvement law took effect in 1981. It's been around for a long time. It's protecting tens of thousands of minor girls and their unborn children. Now, because the parental involvement law is weakened, that now means that 16 and 17-year-old girls in Massachusetts, again, 16 and 17-year-old girls can now get abortions without their parents' consent. So that's certainly bad news out of Massachusetts. So this trend will continue in 2021. There are efforts in Illinois to repeal their state's pro-life parental involvement law. There's also efforts underway in New Jersey to pass a law that legalize abortions throughout all 9 months of pregnancy and even make it possible for non-physicians to do abortions. So a lot of blue states, sadly, are very active trying to make abortion policy more permissive. This is something we need to be aware of. We also see an increase in chemical abortions. The RU46 abortion pill was approved by the FDA in 2000. Unfortunately, this is an administrative decision. There was no hearings. There was no testimony. There were no people from other countries who came to discuss their experience with RU46. So this was just done, by the FDA. Again, no hearings, no testimony, no legislation. Chemical abortions have increased pretty steadily since 2000, but the increase in chemical abortions has become a lot more dramatic in recent years. Between 2015, 2018, there's a slight mistake on this, I apologize, but the percentage of all abortions that were chemical abortions went from 25%, that should be not $40, 40%. So again, the percentage of all abortions that were chemical abortions went from 25% to 40%. In 2018 alone, the number of chemical abortions in the U.S. increased by more than 10%. So for the 2018, for the first time in a long time, the U.S. abortion rate went up. And having looked at the data, I think this big increase in chemical abortions is a reason why. We've seen a pretty consistent downward trajectory in the U.S. abortion rate, but we saw a slight uptick in 2018. And I think this increase in chemical abortions is an important reason why. Now, supporters of legal abortion are trying to increase the availability of chemical abortions. They've been trying to do this during the pandemic. They're going to keep trying to do this after the pandemic's over. So we see several things they've done. 2016, the FDA changes labeling. So now abortion pills can be taken later in pregnancy with fewer visits to the doctor. Our opponents are trying to make chemical abortions available through telehealth, where there's no face-to-face interaction with a physician. And they're trying to make chemical abortions available over the counter, where women don't have to have any interaction with a physician. This, is horrible. I mean, chemical abortions are obviously fatal to the unborn child, but they also pose health risks to women. We know from data, actually data from California's Medicaid program, that chemical abortions have a much higher complication rate. I think their complication rate is 4 times higher than surgical abortions. And if there's less medical oversight, it'll get even worse. If a woman has an undiagnosed ectopic pregnancy, a chemical abortion can be fatal. So making chemical abortions more available is certainly, will destroy a lot more unborn children, but also undermine women's health as well. So we need to be aware of this. Now, I've given you a bunch of bad news. Let's talk about some good news. I always like to give people some encouragement. So you want some good news? Here comes some good news. Pro-life movement has not succeeded overturning Roe v. Wade, but I think we've been more effective than people realize, even more effective than even some pro-lifers realize. We've got the abortion rate down by over 50% in 1980. The abortion rate today is probably lower than it was in 1973 when Roe v. Wade was decided. So this should get more attention than it realized. And, usually when there's public policy success stories like declining crime rates or the fall of communism, this gets some more attention. But here we've cut the abortion rate in half, and outside a handful of people with a real interest in abortion trends, this gets very little attention. So I think this is a big public policy success story. That a woman of childbearing age walking around today, she's half as likely to have had an abortion in a given year than her counterpart was some 40 years ago. So again, we've got the abortion rate down by half. That's great news. Again, we still have over 800,000 abortions every year. That's 800,000 too many. But we have made progress. You can see the progress on this chart that after Roe v. Wade, the abortion rate goes up. It shoots up pretty dramatically. But after 1980, there's a couple hiccups here and there, but it's gone down pretty steadily. This is data from Guttmacher. You see a pretty consistent downward trajectory in the abortion rate. And why do we see this long-term decline? Well, one reason, an important reason, and this should get more attention, is that a small percentage of unintended pregnancies result in an abortion. So we see that over half of all unintended pregnancies were aborted in 1994. They fell to 47% by 2000, fell to 40% by 2008. And a friend of mine here at CUA has preliminary data. The percentage may be as low as 29% in 2014. So more and more women are choosing life. So again, I just want to leave that statistic up. And I tell this to every pro-life audience that will let me talk. Fewer women with unplanned pregnancies are choosing abortion. Why do I tell pro-life audiences this statistic? Why do I present this to pro-life audiences? Because it shows our efforts are effective. If more women are choosing life and more unintended pregnancies are being carried to term, it all flows back to the efforts of pro-lifers. We're doing either one of 3 things, where they're changing hearts and minds and persuading women to, carry those pregnancies to term. We're providing more assistance to women through our pregnancy help centers. And we've seen an increase in the number of pregnancy help centers since the late 1980s. I think the amount has gone up by like 80%. So there's a lot more resources available for women who do face unintended pregnancies, or enacting pro-life laws. So if more women are carrying pregnancies to term, it's either because we're changing hearts and minds, or we're offering more and better services to them, or we're passing protective pro-life laws. So all of this traces back to the activities of pro-lifers. So it's not that unintended pregnancies aren't happening. It's when they do happen, women are choosing life. They're choosing life because of the good effort and good work of pro-life people like you and me. So some final thoughts. Even during hostile presidential administrations, pro-lifers have found ways to make progress. It's obviously difficult to have a president who's not pro-life, and they can do a lot from a policy perspective to undermine our efforts. But we did find ways to make progress on the Clinton administration, and we found ways to make progress during the Obama administration. We did a lot at the state level, that we took advantage of Supreme Court decisions to pass more protective laws, because President Trump has appointed Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. A lot of these state level laws may get a more favorable hearing. I think that, I can't predict with certain what laws that the Supreme Court will decide to hear or how they'll rule. But I do think some of these protective laws will get a more favorable hearing, and we'll see states doing a lot more to protect the unborn. So that's reason for hope. And I know you live in California. I know that's a blue state. I know that limits what you can do legislatively, but no matter where you are, there's always things you can do to build a culture of life. People can sidewalk counsel. People can pray. People can support pro-life educational efforts. I think Students for Life does a great job trying to promote a pro-life message and give out good pro-life materials to college students. We can always help pregnancy help centers. They're doing great work, often on a shoestring, trying to help women in need. So there's always things you can do to build a culture of life, even if legislation is not feasible because of where one might live. So one thing I always tell pro-life audiences: we're never promised a winning streak. We're never promised a smooth trajectory to victory. There will be defeats and there will be setbacks, but it's important to stay the course. And our cause is important. Unborn children are counting on us. Even though it may be frustrating, staying the course is more important now than ever. So suppose, you had a long day. And suppose that, you were distracted and you weren't paying much attention to anything I was saying. That's fine. I've been there. If you forgot everything I said, just remember this one last slide. We have made progress. Since the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, pro-lifers worked tirelessly to defend unborn children. In some cases, progress has not come as quickly as we would like, but progress has been made. I'm very confident we stay the course. Victory will someday be ours. So I appreciate your attention. And I want to show you one last thing. I help run the DC 40 Days for Life campaign. We just had our rally. Sister Dee Dee Byrne. This is our group photo. They're in the center with the blue hat. We had over 50 people. That's not everybody. We had 50 people attend this rally. When I came to Washington, D.C., I took a trip to the Planned Parenthood one Saturday. I saw 2 pro-life people getting hammered on by 6 abortion clinic escorts. And look at us. We've got 20, 30, 40, 50 people there on Saturday and no clinic escorts. So we just built incrementally. I kept showing up last Saturday morning and eventually folks joined me. So we have a much better presence in front of the DC Planned Parenthood because a few people just agreed to keep showing up every Saturday. And it's made a big difference. We've reached out to a lot of people, given good information to a lot of people. Lives are saved on the sidewalk by prayerful pro-lifers. So it can be done anywhere, even in a liberal city like Washington, D.C. So if I can be of service to any of you in your pro-life work, you can email me. My email address is michael.j.new@gmail. John can tell you to get a hold of me. Follow me on Twitter. I tweet out pro-life commentary almost every day. So follow me on Twitter, Michael_J_new. Friend me on Facebook if you know John. We'll have at least one Facebook friend in common. I post my articles and essays there. So thank you for your attention. I don't know if John wants me to take questions now or if we want to wait for the next speaker, but thank you for your attention and best of luck with your work.
Well, thank you, Michael. That was great. That was super great. So we've got a couple of questions that I'll pose to you. I think some of the questions will be answered in subsequent talks, so I won't get to those. And some of them are a bit repetitive, so but anyway, let me give you a few of these. The first question from Molly Kanufke. Hi, Molly. Is whether for a lot of this information, obviously a lot of this is kind of detailed. Is there a single spot where we could get some of this information? Obviously, anyone watching this, we can watch this subsequently in a YouTube format. But if you have any specific place, I don't know if you have any specific place where you'd be hosting some of this information or anything.
If you want this, you can email me. I'd be happy to mail you the PowerPoint slides. I would just say don't share them with everybody, but you can use them for your own personal use. So if you want the PowerPoint slides, just email me. I'll send the PowerPoint slides to John, and I'll let John circulate them however he sees fit.
Sure.
I assembled this just because I've been doing you're never bored in the pro-life movement, but I'm doing a lot of writing and speaking lately, and I've just assembled all this information from my own background. There's not any one source, but if you want the slides, I'm happy to mail them to you.
Okay, great. The next question I'm going to do really quickly. One interesting question I saw was a question about policies like parental leave for pregnant women, and other child care benefits and things like that. Obviously, these things, I think some people might disagree with them or agree with them on fiscal grounds. In and of themselves, they're all very nice. They're all very good things. I just wanted to ask if in your research, Professor New, you had found any kind of discernible impact on abortion rates from different policies, whether it's change in pregnancy, paid leave during pregnancy, child care benefits, things like that on the abortion rate, or if we're even able to discern what the impact of those kinds of policies are.
You asked a very probing question, and I think we need more research on this. And I know that's kind of a dodge, but it is an honest answer. There's not much research suggesting, or really any research I've seen suggesting that, say, expanding welfare benefits gets abortion numbers down. That I know some women do seek abortion for financial reasons. But by and large, people have analyzed the, differences in welfare benefits across states and holding factors constant. It just doesn't seem that the generosity of welfare benefits really seems to have all that much impact. There is some interesting research, I think, out of Eastern Europe. I think it was Romania changed their policy to really have better kind of family leave policies in place. I think Hungary is doing some things with family leave, really kind of encouraging, women to carry pregnancies to term. There is some evidence there that some of these family leave policies, might discourage abortion and encourage women to carry pregnancies to term. Just because something works in another country doesn't necessarily mean it would work in the U.S., but I think that's something that we should, look into, having more kind of family-friendly policies, do what we can to support women who do want to carry pregnancies to term. Again, I don't think it's a substitute for pro-life laws. I think that needs to be abundantly clear. Unborn children deserve legal protection. I think that has to be our top priority. But there's things that we can do, policy tools we can use to help women who want to carry pregnancies to term. I think we should explore that. And, I'm open to, research that, would look at this further. I just don't think we have enough research to say for certain what would happen if these things were put in place in the U.S.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. The last question I'm going to give, I know, Professor New, you do a lot of stuff with Democrats for Life of America. And we had a question about how you see their role within the Democratic Party and as maybe being kind of 11 within the party, what their effectiveness has been, and if it's kind of whether from your perspective, just because I know you and I are both friends with Teresa Bukovac, who is heavily involved with them out of San Francisco. She runs Pro-Life San Francisco. And I just wanted to ask if you had any thoughts about the role of Democrats for Life.
Well, I think the Democrats for Life deserves our support. They certainly, they're working out for them. The Planned Parenthood and groups support legal abortion, plow a lot of money in the Democratic Party and a lot of Democratic candidates. But what they do is very important. I mean, a lot of times you get situations like what we have now where congressional margins are very slim. And if they can succeed in getting, even a small number of pro-life Democrats elected to either the House or Senate, they can be pivotal. So one thing I've always said is that, my long-term goal, I think we need two pro-life parties competing with each other to see who can do the most to protect the unborn. That's a goal that's probably going to be a long time in coming, but that's the ultimate goal, I think. So I think that their efforts deserve support. I don't really know what the best strategy is. I think they're trying different things, which is good. I think that working the local level might make sense. If they can just get a farm team of good pro-life Democrats like to the state legislature or even city council, those are your future congressmen and future senators tomorrow. I think that could work. I also think getting a well-known Democrat to run for president on a pro-life platform could be useful. I think that candidate would do a lot better than people think. I just found it amazing that we had some 20-odd Democrats running for president in 2020, and none of them were really doing much of anything on sanctity of life issues. We couldn't get any of them to jump on stage and support the Hyde Amendment. And it's interesting. I mean, you're not going to break out of the pack by doing what everybody else is doing. You might break out of the pack if you do something different. And I thought some Democrat, maybe Tulsi Gabbard, maybe somebody else should jump up and say, hey, I oppose tax-free funding of abortion. They probably would have gained some votes that way. I mean, they would have gotten criticized by the other candidates, but it would have, separated them from the rest of the field. So, they have their work cut out for them. But I think that, again, you've a lot of pro-lifers there who have liberal political views on other issues. I think they're a constituency that really nobody really represents very well right now. If Democrats for Life can organize pro-life Democrats, succeed in getting some people elected, whether it be to state offices, local offices, or federal offices, their effort should be applauded. So I'm looking forward to working with Teresa and working with others involved with Democrats for Life.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Professor New. I know everyone's muted, but I encourage everyone to give you a stirring round of applause for a great talk. And thank you so much for joining us. We thank you so much for watching this presentation from Right to Life of Central California. If you want to support Right to Life of Central California, we encourage you to go to rtlcc.org. You can learn more about our organization there, read some of our publications, and if you'd like, even drop us a quick donation. You can also access this presentation as a podcast from our podcast feed. Just look for Right to Life Radio on the Apple Podcasts app or the Stitcher podcast app. We hope you will share this with your friends and loved ones, and we thank you so much for watching this presentation.